If one were to ignore the havoc caused by a rampaging tailed beast a kilometer away, the room seemed somberly peaceful as the fourth Hokage of Konoha stood facing his predecessor. From the look on the old man's face, he didn't seem all too happy. So you want to seal Kyuubi's yoki in your female child and its soul in the boy while you sacrifice your life to summon the Shinigami to accomplish this task. Have you gone completely nuts? The thinly veiled disbelief in his voice couldn't have been missed by even an academy student. Not only was his successor robbing the village of its most powerful warrior, he was also making their future weapon weaker by default. I assume you're aware of the fact that Kunoichi have less than adequate chakra reserves to ever truly become frontline combatants. Yes, I know. But, cough Kushina cough Sunid cough Shodime's wife what's your name? Cough Mito. And you should see a medic to get those horrible coughs cured. The blonde rolled his eyes and muttered something about how he's going to die in a few minutes anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yes, her. Anyway, contrary to what you seem to think, I'm not stupid. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. I didn't say you were stupid, a bit slow maybe, but go on. Naruto. Named him already. You're not so slow after all. Whether Minato blushed at the praise, or from embarrassment at being caught having planned the names, Sarutobi had no idea. Yes, Naruto already has quite the impressive chakra reserves, and if they grow like they should his control will be horrible at best. To give him the yoki would be like pouring a sea into another one. That's just asking for disaster with no control over where, when and why. Kasumi, on the other hand, has slightly smaller chakra reserves, and while I would have preferred someone worse off, she's the only other newborn we have. There are a couple more kids, but it's been a few hours since the delivery, so they're not as fresh and might blow up if their coils fail to expand rapidly. Naruto and Kasumi have their Uzumaki ancestry to help in this regard. They've always been known to live long and heal fast. There was, of course, another option. Minato could easily take the Kyuubi with him into the Shinigami's stomach, but that would rob Konoha of a weapon potentially more powerful than Minato himself, something he found completely unacceptable, especially in his absence. So it wasn't even mentioned in the discussion. For people who would find this procedure wrong, the excuse of Kyuubi being too powerful to be held for eternity in the Shinigami's stomach was always there. Of course, usually it would be doubtful to consider a newborn child as a better container than a deity, but their absolute trust in their leading figures would prevent them from looking too critically into the situation. The truth remained that the Shinigami would never swear loyalty to the village like a child. Can't we do something else? Sarutobi grumbled something under his breath that could have been, like, oh I don't know, maybe your wife can do the sealing instead. He decided not to mention this, however, as someone as brilliant as the Yondaime Hokage simply couldn't have not considered an obvious option like that. Minato shook his head in defeat, making the older man sag into his chair. There was no other way they could deal with the current situation without getting even worse results. The only reason Minato wasn't already dead was because the children needed to be alive for at least a few minutes before stabilizing enough to survive the sealing. After that, the younger the better. I have considered all the alternatives very carefully, but we don't have the time to go into such details now. Just trust me on this. My goal was to decide on the choice which led to the most stable seals, and this is it. I won't change it. Sarutobi grunted in unwilling agreement. If you're sure, then so be it. However, his successor gave a tired nod. Consequences, I know. Surely there will be contempt and more than likely some violence, but I know you will handle the situation properly, Sandaime-sama. A small smile formed on his face as he looked upon the older Hokage, praying he would understand exactly what he was trying to say. The aged Hokage just shook his head, whether in disappointment or defeat was anyone's guess. What are you waiting for? Our soldiers die as we speak. The blonde ran a hand through his hair in exasperation. I know. If I had a single child, the QB would have been sealed already. However, the birth of twins had a little complication. They need a few more minutes to settle down. After that, all will be fine, and I can do the sealing. I don't like our men dying any more than you do. The aged Hokage rubbed his forehead to get rid of the budding headache. If we're going to wait, why can't I try to do the sealing? I'm already old and weakening, while you're. Minato just smiled sadly. Can you? It will take you years to understand the Shiki Fujin, Sarutobi-san. Nothing will be left of Konoha by then. Sarutobi grimaced. As far as he knew, the Shiki Fujin was an ultimate technique that could defeat any foe at the cost of the Seal Master's life. The containers didn't really matter, they had those available. The only factor that remained to be considered was a Seal Master capable of using the technique. Konoha's position as the strongest doesn't look so favorable without you. Minato knew that, and he couldn't help but agree. It pained him to leave the village that he had sworn to protect weaker due to his absence, but there was no other way. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but we don't have anyone else skilled enough to be able to do this right now in Konoha but me. I'm sorry I have to leave the responsibility of being the leader to you once more. What are you saying? Of course there are few ninjutsu masters we can spare in your place. I'm here, there is Jiraiya, and what about Kushina? Surely, she can. Minato waved a hand in dismissal before Sarutobi got his point across. Jiraiya, and you don't know this technique. I know Kushina can do it, but the question is, will she seal a demon inside her own children? Having recently given birth, I don't think she's in the best state of mind. Jiraiya-sensei and the others are barely holding her down ever since she heard about my plan. I doubt that would have been possible if she wasn't so weakened by her delivery though. The Sandaime shook his head. Never tell anyone anything until you need to. I thought you must have learned this by now, Minato. Minato closed his eyes in agreement. He had trusted Kushina too much, and now that he finally saw her true face, he could remember things that made him suspicious. Things he had unwittingly ignored. Kushina was an extremely strong kunoichi, one capable of fighting him on equal grounds and having a chance to win. A simple childbirth shouldn't have weakened her that much. And yet, the proof was absolute. What was it that she had hidden from him? Or maybe he was just being paranoid. Perhaps it could be the mental trauma. Her horrified expression on hearing what was going to happen was almost priceless, which made him wonder why he didn't do something like this as a prank earlier. A bit too cruel for my taste, but can't say she doesn't deserve it for not thinking of Konoha above all else. Any selfish idiot can be like her, but it takes a noble mind to be able to go through with something like what I'm going to do. She will never get it, but I hope Naruto and Kasumi will someday understand this. A Hokage's secret wife shouldn't be begging on her knees for her children to be spared. She should be right here, standing by his side, supporting him through the ceiling. She should be proud that her children were chosen to be the saviors of Konoha. Sarutobi stroked his goatee, going through similar thoughts in his head. When Kushina was new to Konoha, she had been treated quite roughly by the locals as she was a foreign refugee. The situation improved considerably with time, and she even made a few friends like Mikoto. But she was still rather hostile to anyone who tried to get too cozy with her, especially boys. But the Uzumaki bloodline wasn't something that could be allowed to die out because some petty girl was waiting for an Uzumaki boy to come and sweep her off her feet, never mind that they were all dead. So they arranged for a fake kidnapping when she was 10 and in the academy with Minato. The Konoha Anbu squad had disguised themselves as Kumo-jonin and had done a rather decent job too, playing their respective parts perfectly. When Minato had rescued her, she immediately felt like she owed her life to him. She had been so enamored with the boy that she completely ignored the impossibility of an academy student without any excessive special training beating a fully fledged shinobi squad sent to another village for kidnapping, by himself. To think, all these years I spent supporting her would be repaid like this. It had been a great sacrifice for the village on Minato's part to marry the redhead. It wasn't that she was undesirable, but he never did have any interest in girls that way. Still, he was the best candidate Konoha had for her, given that he was, and is, obsessively loyal to the village and extremely talented in the shinobi arts. Exactly what she needed. So Minato had sacrificed his own happiness. After a while, the Sandaime once again broke the brief silence. Hashirama Sensei's wife Mito was from Kushina's clan as well, and although I was only 8 years old then, I remember her being extremely weakened for a few days after having her child. Makes me wonder if these are somehow related events. Minato nodded, suspicious once again. She's always had an amazing regeneration rate and incredible reserves, but we don't know much about her bloodline other than that. This doesn't explain the recent events whatsoever. She should have recovered faster than usual. However, this is not the time to discuss such things. I believe another minute is all I have before the twins are ready for the sealing. Is there anything of importance you need to ask? Sarutobi smiled sadly. I've been at this since before you were born. Just make peace with yourself and do Konoha proud. The blonde nodded and looked out of the window, taking one last longing look at his glorious village. Meanwhile, the old man's thoughts once again shifted to Minato's wife. Kushina and her clan had always been extremely secretive, if it weren't for the fact that Minato had saved her from the kidnapping during their academy days, she would never have bedded him later on. Though, ever since then, she considered him the best chance she had at finding love. Not to mention saving one's life forms a trust that cannot be easily broken. It's about time. Konoha shall mourn your loss. Minato smiled. While the village might be weakened with me gone, I have full confidence in my people. They will not fall. Konoha will never fall. I'm sure Kushina will train the twins to be strong. Just make sure they grow up knowing what's right, Sandaime-san, and they will serve as a good replacement for me. The Namikaze grinned as he said that, being one of the very few people who had seen what Sarutobi Hiruzen was capable of. So many dreams he had didn't matter anymore. He had been looking forward to watching his children grow and become powerful servants of Konoha, to see his village rise further above all others than it already was. But once again the immediate needs of the village came first. If he had to give up Kushina's or their children's life for it, along with his dreams, he will, without hesitation. It doesn't matter if they agree to it or not, it doesn't matter if his heart tells him not to do it. The Sandaime sighed in disappointment. It was a lose-lose situation. On one hand Konoha gets destroyed by the Kyuubi, and on the other hand his successor meets an untimely demise. Farewell, Minato. The will of fire burns dazzlingly bright within you. No more was said, and with a yellow flash, he was gone. Only one thought went through the aged Hokage's head after his successor took his leave. That foolish girl. It could all have been prevented if that cursed redhead hadn't started feeling all motherly and turned blind to more important issues, things that were much more important than a single family. Foolish, foolish girl, if you had some sense of responsibility, Minato wouldn't have needed to die today, and your children would have grown up happily under his care. TCH, selfish, despicable, ignorant, I don't even know a proper word for people like you. It came to him, a few minutes later. Traitor. And it was certainly applicable, given Kushina did betray the village by trying to hinder Minato from saving it. They were lucky she was too weak to carry out her will. The Sandaime closed his eyes. Someday you will learn that true strength comes not from the countless hours of training, but from the will of fire. That's why you couldn't stop Minato today, and will never be able to bring harm to Konoha for as long as the sun rises from the east. But by the time you realize this, it will be too late. I only hope your children don't follow in your footsteps, they have a lot on their plates. What was Kushina's problem anyway? All villagers except Konoha had always done this, it was nothing new. The power of human sacrifice increased their war potential greatly. Creation of Jinchuriki was simply too good a deal to pass up on when it could be taken. Not to mention it was an emergency and their only viable option. He winced at the deafening roar that came from near the village gates. He would have gone to help, but it will make no difference. Not against the Kyuubi. With Minato gone, the other cages are prone to feel like they now have an edge over a weakened Konoha. The Raikage especially, people like him would want to descend like wolves on our precious Leaf Village. Right now the only ones who serve as deterrents to such a war would be myself, Jiraiya and Kushina. As far as the Sandaime was concerned, that stupid girl couldn't possibly provide the Jinchuriki with the upbringing that they needed. But what choice did he have other than to let her raise them as she pleased? Getting rid of her right now in such a weakened state wouldn't be a problem, but losing such a powerful kunoichi while the village recovers from Kyuubi's attack would be counterproductive. Does everyone need to know about the Jinchuriki? This would never have been a question if I was sure of Kushina's loyalty, but what choice did he really have? The children would be much more emotionally fragile and easier to influence if they were openly scorned by the majority. If he didn't do this, then his words may fall on deaf, rebellious ears already full of Kushina's disgusting lies and treachery. This way, he could easily make them want to prove themselves to the villagers and ensure their loyalty to the Leaf. This was something that wouldn't have been necessary if Kushina's loyalty to Konoha wasn't in question, but after all she had done tonight, Sarutobi found it exceedingly difficult to trust her with anything. Anyone who couldn't love Konohagakure no Sato simply wasn't worth it. The old man closed his eyes and took a long drag from his pipe before blowing it out. He idly chuckled at the stray thought of how his son had taken inspiration from his smoking habits and created quite a few innovative smoke and ash-based ninjutsu, though technically they were kaiten. I hope you do what is right, Kushina, for it's not just your own future that's going to be decided based on their upbringing. 5 years later, the Hidden Leaf Village. Pit-pat on they walked, from one place, to their lot. On the streets of Konoha, a little red-headed girl and a boy with spiky blonde hair could be seen walking towards the Uzumaki compound at a relaxed pace. Both of them appeared to be 5 years old at most. As they moved from place to place, people stopped doing what they were busy with to stare, or glare. Both of them showed signs of becoming highly alluring given a few years. The girl had long flowing red hair that reached her mid-back, and a cute face with glittering ocean blue eyes. Her skin was fair, and she was wearing a sky blue dress that reached the middle of her thighs. The boy next to her was of the same age. He had spiky blonde hair, a slightly more angular face compared to his sister, but their eyes were identical. His skin was lightly tanned and the boy's expression seemed to indicate thoughtfulness. He wore strangely cut black shinobi pants and a dark blue shirt. The contrasting red spirals on the back of the dresses marked them as two of the few survivors of the once feared and almost forgotten Uzumaki clan from the land of whirling tides. While most people would find both of them very cute, the citizens of Konoha would rather not find them at all. But these people, while not the kindest souls around, refrained from causing the children physical harm. Maybe it was because they feared the mother of those kids, Whirlpool's Red Death, or maybe they were just too lazy to actually do anything, no one knew for sure. One would think the duo would shrink back or be disheartened by this treatment, but the reality was quite the opposite. The girl giggled. We do this to spite them, and they're so stupid. Stupids, can't figure it out. They in fact didn't actually need to go anywhere. The daily routine to visit the academy gates wasn't because they longed to one day attend it, but because it was funny to watch the villagers frothing all over themselves. Not too amusing, maybe, but it's not like they had many sources of entertainment. The girl gave her brother a worried look when he failed to respond to her comment. Oni-chan, what happened to the stop acting immature, Kasumi? Or, let's just go home already? Or maybe even, we are the stupid ones for wasting our time like this. What's wrong with him? We never hide anything from each other, but he's clearly doing it. So not fair. She tried giving him the feminine look of imminent doom she had recently learned from her mother, but his shield of ignorance made her efforts futile. The disheartened girl pouted as she looked at her brother again, but he seemed too lost in thought to even notice her looking. Something's not right, but why won't he tell me? No matter what I do, he just won't say anything. Grah. Roar. What do I do? If I really have any demonic power like everyone says, I command you, let me read his mind. It took the poor girl a few more minutes to realize that making googly eyes at him didn't allow mind reading, and didn't catch his attention either. The crimson-haired girl heaved a defeated sigh. Having always been the more cheerful of the two, she felt it was her responsibility to keep her brother happy. Naruto was the voice of logic, a person she trusted completely and knew she could depend on. Whenever she couldn't understand why something worked like it did, he explained it, always. Their mother was mostly away on missions so that they could have as much money as possible saved for any future crisis. Not to mention she always bought their food, clothes and almost everything else from outside Konoha. From within the village the risk of poisoning was too high, not to mention everything was overpriced for them. Kushina could use her skills as a ninja to buy their supplies from within, but why feed people who hate your guts? That's the reason she gave them anyway. Her brother thought there must be some deeper and more conspiring reason. At first she had been upset when her mother stopped spending time with them after their third birthday, but Naruto had explained that while they were pretty rich by normal standards, Kushina had spent most of her collected wealth to nurture them to the best of her ability for 3 years. She then had to start taking up missions again, despite her reluctance to leave Naruto and Kasumi alone. Kasumi had pouted at the fact that her mother shared their financial status with only her brother and not her. She must think I'm too stupid to get it, but stopped grumbling about it too often after a while. They knew that the village leader, the Sandaime Hokage, would pick the welfare of the village over the three of them any time. Not the best kind of guy when the aforementioned village is the cause of most of their troubles in the first place. One would wonder how children so small could think so poorly of a seemingly kind old man, especially considering the fact that even their mother had considered him a well-wisher at first. To answer that, one would have to know of a particular eye-opening event about 2 years ago, but that's for another time. Kasumi shook her head to clear it of straying thoughts. Her brother didn't like to see her crying. Ah, Oni-chan, are you sure you're okay? You've been awfully silent today. I'm fine, Kasumi. Thanks for asking, but you don't need to worry. I just have a lot on my mind. He gave her a reassuring smile as he said that, easing some of her worries. Her response came out habitually. Like what? She never had given much thought what was and was not appropriate to ask others, at least in her brother's case. She just assumed that she could help with her brother's problem. The redhead tilted her head towards the blonde, expecting an answer to help the boy in his problem. Unfortunately for her, Naruto seemed to be firm in his decision to not tell her. It's not something I can tell you now. Maybe later. She was a good girl, but not quite mature enough to handle the kind of situation he was dealing with. Even if he did tell her, all it would result in was a worried sister and, if Kasumi told their mother about it, a pissed-off mother. A very pissed-off mother. He shuddered, muttering something about crazy mothers and poor little Naruto. Hearing that he didn't want to tell her his problem further disheartened the redhead, causing her to internally cry about the unfairness of it all. So he was keeping something from her. Oni-chan doesn't trust me. But he did say that I will be the first to hear about it, so it doesn't matter that much, I guess. She forgot all about it as she felt her brother ruffling her hair. He was the only one aside from Ka-chan that she ever allowed to touch her. Not that anyone would actually want to touch her, or even be anywhere close to her given her reputation of the ticking time bomb packing the power of the strongest Biju. It wasn't as bad as the demonic image her brother had, but she certainly wasn't held in high regards anywhere. The blonde inwardly heaved a sigh of relief as he saw the girl drop the topic. Naruto smiled at his sister as he ruffled her hair some more, causing Kasumi to giggle softly. You're messing it up again. Even as she huffed and pouted, they both knew she didn't mean it. Meanwhile, the people on the streets were in a mass panic, thinking the demon was acquiring his powers back. What else could the demon be doing, touching the thing that contained its powers? The twins never noticed the hysterical shouting and the villagers running around like headless chickens. In some rare cases, people were even considering seppuku or some other form of suicide to escape what they assumed would be Kyuubi's revenge. Or maybe not. The two of them didn't look to check, but it had happened once in the past. It had been 7 days since that talk with Kasumi, and, even though it was a tough choice, Naruto had finally reached a decision. Flashback. Kushina finally took a day off from her missions to spend it with him and his sister, and to say they were happy about it would be a huge understatement. All three of them had loads of fun the whole day, mutually criticizing the villagers, making conspiracy theories against the Hokage, and planning the set fire to the village being a few of the highlights. Naruto was especially happy with his gift, as to him getting a kunai set meant his mother acknowledged him as more than a child. Since they came with the usual array of seals Kushina used on all her equipment, including some strengthening seals, Naruto had another reason to be happy. Unfortunately for her, Kasumi got a girly dress, so she was left pouting and asking her brother to let her touch his kunai once. They weren't sharp enough to inflict serious injury on opponents or himself, so he let her, but they were good enough for practice and defending himself if needed. He wasn't exactly going to complain about their lack of edge given his still naive twin might just decide to chew on them, which will definitely be a disaster with regular kunai. Kasumi was happy enough with her own gift, easily satisfied and fickle-minded as she was. It had automatic repair and cleaning seals and was also highly strengthened with multiple hidden seals. Normal attacks with kunai and shuriken wouldn't put a scratch on it. It was more of an acknowledgement of her ability to get into trouble than her maturity for her to get such a protective gift, but neither Naruto nor Kushina thought it necessary to mention such a thing. Naruto didn't give anything to Kasumi. The last time he did that 2 years ago, just a handmade grass bracelet, she had cried about not having a gift for him for hours. Last year she had tried making something for him, but always got too excited and ended up giving it to him before the actual day, ultimately running out of any ideas when the time came, thus repeating the process. The blonde considered preventing the whole scenario better than trying to console her afterwards. Idly chuckling at his sister's plight, Naruto was about to close his eyes and drift off into a peaceful sleep when a sudden voice that seemingly echoed inside his head startled him. Hello. Naruto took a sharp breath in as the feminine voice in his head seemed to chuckle at his shock. He shook his head to clear it. He could have sworn he had just heard a girl speak in his head. Perhaps he'd had too much fun today, and was more tired than he thought. I don't have voices in my head, I don't have voices in my head, I'm just tired, need some sleep. Yeah, that's it. The voice turned from cheerful to amused. Yes you do. And not just any voice, but the voice of the greatest demoness ever. Naruto continued chanting as if it was his last link to life. He was sure he could drown the other voice out if he kept chanting. Not that the other voice was even there. No. I don't have voices in my head. I don't have voices in my head. That was when a sudden realization struck him, but he refused to believe it. Greatest demoness. It couldn't be. His heartbeat quickened in fear. Kushina had told him and his sister all about the unique condition when they were but 3 years old, and showered them with enough love to not let it bother them. But he hadn't expected this. Ka-chan never said about the QB talking to him. The worst he thought his condition could bring was the isolation his family was experiencing, and perhaps some occasional attacks from haters. Don't tell me you're the QB. He fearfully questioned, hoping his assumption was wrong. The voice seemed to snicker, and he could feel it rolling its eyes. He shuddered. Speak in your mind, little human. Or people will know that you're talking to me. The voice sing-songed mirthfully. Naruto couldn't help but shudder at the thought of the QB speaking like that. It was unfathomable. The voice scoffed. How many other souls do you have sealed in you? Of course it's me, you pathetic human. Needless to say, Naruto did not like being called pathetic, whether it was by the almighty holy villagers of the greatest undefeatable village of sunshine and rainbows Konohagakure no Sato, or by a monstrously large and supremely powerful demonic entity of doom. Fine. What do you want? Naruto surprised himself by his rather harsh demand, but didn't ponder much on it. Ka-chan had told him that the QB was powerless inside him, so he knew he was safe. He found it strange that QB's voice was so girly, but it wasn't entirely unexpected. After all, no one said that QB was a male. He felt her smirk, once again shuddering at the weird sensation. How was it that he could feel her facial expressions? Straight to the point, eh? Well, I want you to know that since you need to be strong in order to defend yourself and those 2 females you seem to cherish, how about I give you some help? Naruto could practically feel how much the demoness wanted him to accept her offer, so of course he was a bit suspicious. If he made the wrong decision, who knows what might happen? Even meteors raining out of the sky wasn't out of the equation. Whatever made you think I want your help? And, more importantly, why would you want to help me? He couldn't deny that he wanted to get stronger to protect his mother and twin, and defend himself as well. But he won't accept an offer of power that will later come back to bite him in the rear, and this one seemed like just that. Even Kasumi wouldn't fall for something like this, and she was the most naive person he knew, given he knew a total of 3 including himself. That wasn't saying much. Meanwhile, the demoness was inwardly cursing herself. She could already feel a massive headache coming from all kinds of explanations she will need to give. She had just used that seductive voice so that the kid would be more inclined to accept her help. Damn, that plan backfired. I should have gone with the motherly style. 3 hours later in Naruto's mindscape. Naruto was inside a sewer, sitting in front of what could only be described as a giant cage with golden gates. The word, weird, only just began to describe the situation. On the opposite side of him and inside the cage was a woman of unearthly beauty. Fiery red hair framed her beautiful face, 3 whiskers sprung from each cheek, and her skin had the lightest tan. The redhead wore a silver blouse and a translucent red cloth that covered her right arm and formed into a mini skirt, which didn't really conceal very much. Once again, this was not what Naruto had expected. Even though his mother had taught him to not assume anything and to not judge others before knowing them, he still thought demons were supposed to look different. She's really pretty, probably just like that colorful poisonous frog we almost touched before Ka-chan burned it. Pretty means danger. Pretty means danger. Ka-chan can about anyone without much thought, and Kasumi can do the same because she doesn't think before doing things. The question is she a danger to me or my family? If not for her dangerously shining red foxy eyes and lack of wings, Naruto would have thought of her as some kind of angel. Of course, given he was a certified demon brat, he wouldn't trust an angel or god any more than a demon. Those eyes, looking at him like he was some inconsequential bug, but unlike the villager's eyes, there was no hatred in them. It was far too early to conclude much from what his supposed prisoner had told him. But after convincing Naruto that she could not get out of the seal and was willing to help him get strong to protect her own existence, they had reached upon a somewhat mutual agreement. The blonde gave her a skeptical look. So, since you can't give me tons of chakra for healing or protection, you're going to train me from now on so you don't die in case I get into trouble. He was still a bit suspicious. That was just too good of a deal with almost no downsides. The smile the demoness gave him was so big that it was impossible for it to be considered natural. Yes. Genius. You deserve some kind of divine reward or something to have figured that out. I mean, it's not like I told you that clearly right off the bat. And it took you only 3 hours to get that one fact right. That's gotta be some kind of intellectual record. At this rate, we'll be done in, let's see, a few centuries. Yeah, I believe that will be enough for a suitable conversation with you. Quote. Seriously, is it your personal mission to irritate me, or are you just that retarded? Naruto glared at her intensely, just a bit peeved. What did she expect? He wasn't going to make deals without being sure of anything. What kind of person with half a brain would assume otherwise? So the time and extra precautions he took were justified, at least according to him. If I had been stupidly trusting enough to take some pretty chick I never met before's words at face value, we would both have been dead long before today. And do I need to mention that you are the root of all of my family's sufferings? QB glared back at the little boy. Don't call me a chick, you midget. I'm a vixen. A smoking hot and drop-dead gorgeous vixen. One does not simply call me just pretty. What was I expecting anyway? He won't just trust me and forget everything else. I will need to work my way in here. She pursed her lips as she thought about the best way to convince the human. A few moments passed in silence, and after going through all the possibilities, she resumed the conversation. Look, it's not that I like being quiet for 5 years in this sewer. If I had started out any sooner, you probably would have told others about it, not to mention you were not ready. Naruto huffed. His Car-chan always told him that he should never peg someone as a friend or an enemy without knowing him properly. So just because Kyuubi attacked Konoha did not mean she deserves his hate, neither did being a citizen of Konoha give anyone the right to his love. In either cases, it would be their intentions and actions that would decide their fate. While that answers my question of, why now, you're still ignoring explaining why would you want to train me aside from that survival factor. I think we both know my chances of dying by myself aren't that great given Car-chan is about ready to start training me, and she's the strongest. The demoness rolled her eyes. Oh, my mother is the strongest. Look how cool she was when she didn't let her children being used as glorified jail cells. How awesome she is when her reputation and power prevents anyone from looking at her children with ill intent. Wow. What would a demon have to offer to me compared to her? Surely even the demon must be aware of her mighty awesomeness. Being a demon meant nothing to Naruto. To him, demon was a fancy word villagers like to give to anything they hate. Car-chan told him that somehow the villagers think by calling anyone a demon their hatred become justified, and they won't feel guilty after doing anything to a demon. Naruto didn't properly understand the whole demon concept, but he knew that they were powerful, feared and hated by people. So was his mother. She was powerful and feared as an outstanding ninja, and hated for housing the demons. So Kyuubi was way off mark if she considered Naruto to be influenced by that word. Whatever, mock me, mock my mother. I don't care what you think. I do not trust you yet since you seem not to want to give me your real reason, but fine, I'll accept your training. That of course made Kyuubi furious. How dare a puny little human take her offer, as though he deserved it and not even thank her. He should be licking her feet in gratitude. Sure, her reasons for the offer were selfish, but still. Be grateful you. I, the mighty Kyuubi no Kitsune, greatest of all Biju is making you, an insolent, retarded, ungrateful. I think I get the idea. Human midget, my legacy. Show some respect. Naruto's nostrils flared in anger. Did she have to insult my height? I will get you back for this, Foxy-chan. Just you wait, one day, I will make you regret this. Of course, he knew it wouldn't be wise to voice it out loud. You don't really look that impressive, and let's not forget you're pretty much powerless and defeated right now, and have been that way for years. Kyuubi huffed indignantly, you. Naruto rolled his eyes at the demon queen. Yeah, don't think moping like a little girl will fool me. I've seen the real thing, it looks a bit clumsier. Nice try, though. Ah, that stupid sister of yours. Kyuubi seemed to be in deep thought for a while before she responded. Well, whatever, if you don't want to trust me, don't. It will only hurt your training, but I can't make you do it. Maybe if you give me a base to build that trust, some background, you know. She considered his suggestion for a while before nodding. All right, but first, I should let you know the basic rules for me being your sensei. He nodded, apparently satisfied. Fine, unless it is something extreme, I'll give it a shot. In case someone comes after me or my family, I can't expect any help from Konoha. You're assuming that this village won't be helping them. Or it could be Konoha itself coming after you. Kyuubi reminded him with a smirk. I assume nothing, but it'll be best to prepare for the worst possible outcome. Wow, I hope you're not just saying that, and actually follow through with those high and mighty words of yours. Kyuubi smirked as she saw a muscle in his jaw jump. Okay, little midget. Naruto twitched. I'm a kid. I'm supposed to be short. Whatever. Here are a few things you must remember. First of all, never question my instructions. I'll explain whatever needs explaining. Secondly, I already told you I can't get out of here, and I give my word as a demon queen, which I cannot break, that if such a possibility presents itself, I'll let you know first. The blonde nodded. That was a good reassurance and slightly put his mind at ease. Know that I'm doing this only so that we don't have any complications. She smiled in a way Naruto wasn't sure was meant to be predatory or attractive. The blonde stared long and hard into Kyuubi's eyes. Okay, I understand. I'll try my best not to judge you based on what others say. Kyuubi grinned. Finally, her efforts for the past few hours pay off. Now that that's out of the way, I think we should discuss your future. I've gone through some of your memories, being in your mind and all. I can let you know right now that it won't be anything like your current expectations. Those villagers won't suddenly start liking you or your family, and that dumb prankster act you plan on pulling will only make them want to get rid of you more. It will make you more of an annoyance. Naruto yawned. It was just a passing thought when I was younger and wondering how to make them stop hating us. I didn't plan on going through with it, ever. And I don't really care what they think now. Clearly, you're not very good at mind reading. She coughed, pointedly ignoring what he said. As for your sister, I think her current situation is the best. As long as the villagers are afraid of doing anything to her, she'll be relatively safe. You, on the other hand, need some serious work if you want to be even half as strong as her later on. She cringed at the thought of having a weak container. She hated weakness. I think you best keep your concerns limited to me, leave worrying about Kasumi to her brother and mother. The demoness frowned. You're not being friendly. Naruto nodded. I'm not trying. Please get back on topic. I know from experience that trying to make friends is just plain stupid for someone like me. The redhead shrugged. Ah, well, okay. Back on topic, as you said. I was looking through your heritage and DNA, and I found out that Uzumaki males have the bloodline of the Sage of Six Paths dominant in their blood. Though only a few ever managed to activate it. I was a bit skeptical at first, as I have already sensed another person activating it a few years ago, and it is such a rare occurrence that it only happens once every few hundred years. Naruto wasn't so sure. He knew that the female Uzumaki had a bloodline, but from what his Ka-chan told him, Uzumaki males can't have it as it only appears in girls for some unknown reason. I know about the Uzumaki bloodline, but it's not found in males to the best of my mother's knowledge. As a side note, I'm not very interested in history, I care more about now. Unless it is something that actually matters, please don't mention historical events again. His tenant smirked. I'll decide how I teach, and you'll listen. Naruto rolled his eyes. Fine, have it your way then. Anyway, it's called the Rinnegan. It enables the user to manipulate all 5 basic elements as well as gravity, along with some special techniques that the sage created and embedded in the bloodline so that his descendants can use it to shape a better world. But you don't need to worry about that yet. The first thing you need to do is activate it, which is unlikely to happen. Naruto nodded. That did seem to explain it. If something happens rarely, it's harder to find out about it. So maybe Ka-chan didn't know. Or maybe she didn't want to get his hopes too high so that it doesn't hurt if he can't activate it. So you are saying that if I try hard enough, I can activate this Rinnegan of mine, and then you will help me learn how to use it. She shook her head in negative. I will only be guiding you a little with it and training you to better use it, but you will have to learn it mostly by yourself. I don't have it myself, so there is only so much I can do before you're on your own. However, that's not why you're here though. You are here because I will be training you for a year to be able to activate my masterpiece, the Yogengan. Eye of the Prophecy. Now he was confused, again. Sure, he understood he will have to work hard to earn his strength, but some things still didn't make sense to him. What is this Yogengan you just mentioned? I've never heard of it from Ka-chan. She grinned as she wagged her finger in front of the little boy. Of course you didn't, I just made that name up. It's the combination of 3 Kekkei Genkai, the Rinnegan, the Sharingan and one more. The blonde raised an eyebrow. That's like mixing sugar and milk and then claiming the substance to be an invention of yours named Mugo or Silk. The demoness blushed faintly, but decided to ignore his words. Before I explain that, let me tell you the history of my greatest creation to date, the Sharingan. Now that certainly managed to surprise him. The only Sharingan he had ever heard about was the Uchiha clan's dojutsu, and he was very certain he was not an Uchiha. Moreover, he never thought the Kyuubi might actually be related to the Uchiha. Noticing his confused look, Kyuubi continued. I created it a few hundred years ago so that I may be able to utilize my fire affinity better and cast my more powerful genjutsu with ease. But I couldn't in my right mind start experimenting with my own sight. You made it. After letting him gape for a few minutes in silence, she continued. So, I decided to make a prototype and give it to a human, an Uchiha woman to be precise, and observe its capabilities and flaws. My plan was to take care of any defects by observing the humans before I used it on myself. The reason I chose the Uchiha woman was, if you didn't know this already, because Uchiha are the Rikudo Sennin's descendants. Even though they didn't inherit much from their ancestor like the Uzumaki, their chakra was much more closely related to mine and the Sennin's energy. Plus they were more readily available to me than the Uzumaki or Senju. Those annoying little pests are harder to come by. She seemed lost in thought for a few moments before she once again decided to continue. It was fine for a while. The Uchiha woman was able to cast better genjutsu, and her affinity for fire was greatly amplified. I found out later that the Sharingan was capable of being inherited by her children, whose descendants became famous for using the Sharingan in battle. No one even questioned how they suddenly sprouted a dojutsu. Everyone assumed that's what they inherited from the sage but had decided to keep the ability hidden until then. But I didn't really care. Naruto just frowned. His personal experience with the Uchiha was limited to the knowledge that they were supposed to be in charge of the police force, but he'd never had any confrontation with them yet. The demoness smirked. I was particularly impressed when the chakra viewing capacity of the Sharingan and the improved memory it granted enabled them to copy the shinobi techniques just by viewing them. That wasn't something I originally intended, but unexpected results were always highly probable in experiments, which is why I didn't directly experiment on my own eyes. However, one of the Uchiha changed everything. She sighed and looked away for a moment, before continuing again in a more subdued tone. Even though she didn't like being reminded of this, it was required to make the boy understand everything properly. Uchiha Madara and his brother Uchiha Izuna were able to retain the Mangekyo Sharingan, a stage which I did not intend to be unlocked in the prototype. But I let them have it, curious of its effects. Of course, just because I did not intend it to happen didn't mean I was unprepared for it. Just in case someone activated Mangekyo, a failsafe seal embedded within the very structure of the eye started blinding the user with every use. This rendered it nearly useless in the long run, but gave me enough data to complete assessing its capabilities and effects upon the Uchiha's death. But that damn Madara. Kyuubi spat out the man's name like it was poison, startling her newly formed disciple before she managed to regain her composure. He found a way around my seal. I'll admit I'm no genius in Fuinjutsu, but it was supposedly impossible for anyone but me to know how the seal worked and how to remove it. As far as I knew, I thought my plans were perfect. I've seen Ka-chan practice Fuinjutsu at home, but it doesn't seem like anything that would work the way you describe. You won't understand now, it took me thousands of years to get that technique perfected. Simply put, I can use my yoki to modify even extremely minute things, like the building blocks of living beings. Not wanting to get entwined in something he couldn't understand now, Naruto moved on to something he did. So how did Madara get around your seal? The demoness grimaced. Madara took his brother's eyes and implanted them in his own eye sockets. Because of the way I designed it, his brother's seal was useless on him, and he gained the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Now, that I was not prepared for. I mean, not only did both the siblings Madara and Izuna attain Mangekyo, but Madara found a way around the blinding seal which prevented his eyes from getting weaker with time. The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan strengthened his eyes to a level where he was able to obtain some of my powers, including eternal youth. I could not just let someone use my powers like that, so I decided to end my observation and eliminate the failed experiment. Even though Naruto was extremely smart for his age, he still didn't understand some of the things the vixen was telling him, but he got the basic idea. Madara was already on Naruto's worst scum list, right above Minato Namikaze himself. These were the guys who were their brothers, sisters, sons, and lovers for the goals. Madara's goal was to obtain more power, and Minato's goal was the protection and strengthening of the village. Having his own father, at least by blood, condemn him to such a life was much worse than having some random person do it. A sigh escaped his lips. So is that why you attacked Konoha? Kyuubi frowned, which Naruto thought was because she was yet again reminded of the supposedly bad incident. He sympathized with her. No, I had no idea where he was. I can only get in Uchiha's memories after the death, until I was sealed here, and no one I got the memories from at that time had any idea of Madara's whereabouts. I had no choice but to wait for Madara to show himself. It was on the day of your birth that he'd an Uchiha while sneaking in and out of Konoha. When I found him running away a few miles away from this village, I told him his history and proceeded to take what was rightfully mine. It's not like he could have struggled much against me. I let my guard down though when he didn't protest at all and willingly let me remove his left eye, and then he cast a powerful genjutsu on me to save his right Sharingan. I was able to break out of it, of course, but that momentary lapse was all he needed to escape. I got a sample of the bloodline back, but I did not like being tricked by a pathetic human. I was pissed off. So to relieve some frustration, I went on a rampage. I eventually ended up in the nearby village of Konoha. Again, I was not expecting a mere human to be able to summon a being stronger than me, and it just had to be the Shinigami. He already hates me. She pouted. And then I ended up here. In your dirty little mind. It took him a moment to absorb everything she said, and then he finally caught up to her last words. I don't have a dirty mind. It's a sewer. The blonde grumbled but decided not to retort. It wouldn't hurt to be at least on semi-friendly terms with the voice in his head. He had no fetish for headaches. So you attacked Konoha because you were pissed off. That was why thousands of humans died by your hands. I mean paws, or tails, something. She shrugged. Pretty much, yes. She didn't understand what was so wrong with all those idiots, not like they wouldn't have died in a while anyway. Humans were like that. One moment they were there, and then just a little bit later they're all wrinkly and on the verge of death. For an ancient immortal like her, their lives held no value. Until her own depended on one, anyway. The only reason I told you all this is because the Sharingan is now complete. Naruto's face scrunched up in confusion. I already potentially have the Rinnegan, so why do I even need? Did you forget already? I told you, I'll combine them both to make something better. Naruto smiled nervously. It's sure to work, right? Kyuubi had to smirk at the way he seemed just a little excited, underneath it all. I think I can do it. But since Rinnegan is genetically superior to Sharingan, even if I'm not entirely happy to admit it, first you need to activate your Rinnegan. That will be your first test, to be able to do that. If I activate the Sharingan before that, Rinnegan will just remove any weaker dojutsu and take over, while Sharingan won't be able to do the same with Rinnegan, and I will be able to force a merger. It might hurt a little, but I'm sure it will work. Naruto gulped. The demoness couldn't quite contain the grin upon seeing his apprehension. Just you wait till your training begins. You're lucky to have such good genes, kiddo. Makes it easier to change them without much risk. The blonde blinked with a clueless expression. But I'm not wearing jeans. And please don't check my pockets without permission again. Oh. The redhead resisted the urge to smack herself. Okay, so maybe I shouldn't assume that he knows everything I'm talking about. I meant your blood, kind of, get it? Naruto didn't, but he nodded anyway. Later he'll have to ask Ka-chan what his genes had to do with his blood. What's so special about my blood though? Kyuubi grinned widely. Let's just say that you're not exactly normal, even if we ignore my presence here. He pouted cutely at not being answered properly, causing Kyuubi to giggle in amusement. Well, as long as I don't have to face the Shinigami again, he's not that bad, she shuddered. So, what do you think I should aim for? The demoness gave him a nonchalant shrug. Meh, be as strong as possible so you don't die. No, I mean, aside from that. I don't want to fight for them, they hate me. Kyuubi's melodic laughter filled his mindscape. Naruto thought that it resembled his mother and sisters. Beautiful. When you're strong, people will want you to be on their side, and if you're not with them then they'll want you dead. Konoha is no different. You will fight for no one but yourself if I have anything to say about it. I see, I suppose you're right in a way. I'll fight for. Now wait just a second. What? Don't run before you can crawl. I'll fight for this, I won't let anything happen to them. Blah blah, I don't want to hear it. As you are right now, you're useless and pathetic. You're fighting no one and are worth nothing. First, you train and grow strong, then you can think about what you want to do with that strength. Got it. The blonde grumbled. Yes, I get it. Looking at the supposedly demonic entity, he couldn't help but shiver. The resemblance she held to his mother was frightening, flaming crimson hair, melodic voice and beauty that made any other girl look like a dirty piglet in comparison. He thanked heavens for Kyuubi's whiskers, tails, slightly pointy ears and red slitted eyes, or he would have had trouble not thinking of her as family. One part of him wondered if she had taken this appearance specifically to make him let his guard down. But he put that aside for now. This is a lot to take in. Do you mind if I think about it alone for a few days? Sure, I'll be waiting. Kyuubi leaned back as she relaxed a bit once he disappeared from the mindscape. To be honest, the possibility of being dragged into Shinigami's stomach when her vessel died terrified her. She wasn't about to let Naruto die, ever. Or at least until she found a way out. End flashback. It wasn't much of a debate, really. The decision was obvious. He'd only taken this time off because he just felt the need to come to terms with it completely before making such a commitment. In the back of his mind, Naruto was unnerved by how easily he was accepting a deal with a demon queen. But he quickly squashed that thought. So what if she was a demon? To the villagers he was a demon too. It meant nothing. Nothing. Hi, can you hear me? Yes. Naruto hesitated only a moment before he strengthened his resolve. I'm ready. He felt Kyuubi nod in acceptance. Excellent, excellent. I'll be training you for 12 months so that you can activate your bloodline. It won't be easy, but if you do as I say, I believe my vessel should be more than capable for doing it. Naruto grinned despite himself, feeling oddly happier from her praise and confidence in him. Let's do this then. Streets of Konoha, a year later. It was almost 11 at night on October 10th, and the villagers of Konoha were happily celebrating the Kyuubi festival like they did every year. Festivity was in the air as drunken laughter and dancing figures waltzed throughout the village. Meanwhile, a small figure, presumably that of a 5-6-year-old child, could be seen gliding through the rooftops with ease. Naruto's training this past year had vastly increased his flexibility, strength and stamina. Although he had yet to learn any kind of jutsu, whether it be nin or tai, he was quite content with his progress in a year. Not only had he come to like Kyuubi in the past year, the demoness herself seemed to have taken an unusual interest in him. From the Uzumaki boy's point of view, she had been just like his mother, kind and loving most of the time, strict when needed. While he didn't blindly trust her like he would for his mother and sister, he did hold her words in high regard. Most of the training Kyuubi provided him with this past year focused not only on increasing his chakra reserves and control, but also to strengthen his body to the point where it would be able to handle the massive boost that Rinnegan might provide. Today he would see if his preparations would pay off as he had hoped. He didn't want to disappoint his mentor, and himself. Regardless of all that, he wanted to get this situation dealt with as soon as possible. All of it seemed to make him uneasy. The risk was high, and his chances were questionable despite all of Kyuubi's assurances. His attire didn't particularly appeal to him either. He was running through the streets wearing an orange eyesore of a jumpsuit. He didn't have anything against the orange color, he liked it very much as a matter of fact, but that jumpsuit was just plain hideous and uncomfortable. Kyuubi had told him that he needs to be placed in a life and death situation to be able to activate the Rinnegan. Fortunately or unfortunately, in this village it was a constant life and death struggle for Naruto whenever he wasn't accompanied by his mother or sister. Naruto felt a smile form on his face as he recalled all the hard work he had done this past year. He had been sneaking away from his twin sister and training to improve his physical and spiritual strength as well as control. As a result, not only his physical capabilities, but his chakra capacity and control also improved greatly. When he had started, his chakra control wasn't something to take pride in, no thanks to his naturally large reserves caused by his Uzumaki heritage. But he had worked harder than any child his age should and eventually overcome his problems. That didn't mean being an Uzumaki was a disadvantage to his training, in fact it was quite the opposite. The godlike stamina helped him greatly when it came to the physical aspects of the training. Kasumi's hurt look whenever he came back a bit battered and bruised from his training always made him wince. He had the distinct impression that she thought the villagers were physically abusing him, if the disdainful looks she gave them was anything to go by. He had to chuckle when some of them cringed. After all, you don't expect to see that much hatred and disgust in such a young girl's eyes. He felt bad for letting her cry alone because she thought that he was shielding her from harm and getting hurt because of her, but he just couldn't find the courage to tell them all about Q-chan and his bloodline. Despite all that, he promised himself to tell her almost everything once he activated his bloodline. His little sister didn't deserve to suffer like that just because he was a bit afraid. He wasn't doing it without reason though. He found out from Kyubi that, today, he would either awaken the Rinnegan or die. That was why he didn't tell Kasumi about his training. She would never let him go risk his life willingly. That was the reason for all those preparations. There was only one chance, and if it didn't happen today, it would never happen. He had given it his all, now it was time to see if that was enough. He would be lying if he said he wasn't nervous. In fact, he was so close to pissing his pants right now that Kyubi was considering delaying the test for another year. Naruto, get a hold of yourself. You're ready, trust me. I wouldn't let you do this if you weren't. You know I don't like the idea of dying either. That calmed him down a bit. After all, she did have multiple millennia worth of experience, and she didn't want him to die. Or rather, she didn't want to die. But then again, one person popped all those ideas like a water balloon is popped by a needle. Madara did up her plans plenty of times. That name made her blood boil. Not that she had any, it was all Yoki and her soul, but that was beside the point. He was planning on naming his kid Madara, if he had one. That will teach her for all that torture she calls training. The blonde shivered as a chill ran down his spine. Why do I feel like I just signed my own doom? 30 minutes later, Naruto was pissed. No, scratch that, he was furious. When he had left the compound, he expected a giant mob ready and waiting for him to help activate his bloodline. But what did he get? He'd been jumping around in an orange jumpsuit in between a crowd of drunken villagers, and the idiots didn't even notice him in the drunken haze. What was wrong with them? Can't they see there's a defenseless 6-year-old scapegoat amidst them to take their anger and hatred out on? What were they thinking dancing around like utter morons? He gritted his teeth in anger as he realized this might just be much harder than he had thought. But Naruto Uzumaki didn't come unprepared, far from it. Reaching into his thigh pocket, Naruto took out a scroll he had prepared just in case something like this happened. He wasn't skilled enough to create storage scrolls yet, so he had borrowed one of the empty ones lying around the Uzumaki compound. A small application of chakra and out came a number of banners and costumes. Grinning, Naruto put the styrofoam devil horns on his head, which he had handcrafted himself. He then wrapped a belt around his waist that conveniently had 9 orange tails attached, glittered for extra measure. To top it all off, he held up a huge banner supported by 2 long sticks. The slogan, "The Demon Brat's here, let's finish what the Yondaime Barker started." along with the picture of a childishly drawn nine-tailed fox wiggling her displayed proudly in bright red color. One by one, people noticed it and gaped. A particularly stupid villager who seemed more intoxicated than the others felt it appropriate to read the poster out aloud. The dwemen bratich here, letich finish what de Yondaim Bwaka started. Wviggle. Apparently, he didn't feel the need to not call his beloved Yondaim an idiot. A roar of anger met his statement, causing Naruto to roll his eyes. Finally, good-for-nothing idiots. Yeah, let's the demon brat. He's alone. The villagers couldn't have been more ecstatic. For the first time in 6 years, the demon brat was alone. It took them a while to believe their luck, but now that they knew it was real and not some drunken illusion, they couldn't be any happier. Their wishes had been granted. There was no demon nearby to help him, there was no risk. The brat was weak, they could him. And they will, painfully. Oh yes, the demon had caused them so much pain, they couldn't just let it die easily. They would torture him till he begged to die, and then they would torture him some more. Maybe if Naruto hadn't been kept under tight security of his mother for most of his life, the villagers might not have been this violent on getting an opportunity to beat him. Mystery did nothing to quell their fears and suspicions. Maybe if Kasumi was with him, they might have been afraid of doing anything due to the possibility of destabilizing her and causing a, possibly, village-ending explosion or, maybe, making her go berserk. But right now, they had nothing to fear and no one to stop them. As it was, they were surprised to get their hands on him and more than a little happy to get a chance to extract some sweet revenge. The chase continued pointlessly for a bit longer with more and more people joining in. But all of them were civilians. The shinobi skillfully ignored the mob if they stumbled upon it. They really didn't care what happened to the brat, they might even be a little happy. It's not like they were under orders to protect him. Those few who might have actually cared weren't really going around checking random crowds of running people on a festival. Things like this were expected. Naruto was eventually chased outside of the village gates, into the forest a few miles away from Konoha. By now he was getting worried, but knew he had to do this. He had prepared for a whole year. After going through countless chakra control exercises, improving and strengthening his body, training in secret, mindscape training, he wasn't going to back out now. A dull shockwave flowed out of the blonde, carrying enough force to justify the technique's name. Trees and bones broke apart under the crushing power, dust blew up, and the ground groaned under the pressure. Backbones snapped like twigs and organs burst like balloons. It all happened so fast that none of the villagers had a chance to even comprehend their imminent doom. Not even Kyubi had been expecting the destructive power that had suddenly burst forth from the small blonde child and had torn everything around him asunder. The villager who had been holding the butcher's knife and had tried to cleave Naruto in half was blown back by a power so great, that, for a moment, he felt as if a deity was crushing him like a bug in his fist. The life bled out of his eyes as he suffered more pain than he had ever thought possible, even more than what he'd been hoping to inflict on his victim. The feeling of having one's organs getting crushed from within combined with the massive shockwave that rippled throughout his body proved to be too much for his brain to handle. Everyone within 20 meters of the boys suffered similar fates, whereas others who were further away from the area didn't get hit hard enough to liquefy their internal organs, thus surviving the initial blow. Unfortunately, just because they survived the initial blow didn't mean that they would survive the one that followed. The survivors, along with various stones, both sharp and blunt, were harshly flung away by the force of gravity itself. None could hope to survive when the planetary force itself is against them. The people in the mob felt their bones being crushed, backs being snapped, internal organs hemorrhaged and pierced by their own weapons until their body and mind could take no further. The deaths were far more horrific and painful than those who had died before them. Agonized screams filled the air as they struggled to move, breathe, speak or just stay alive. Slowly, their painful whimpering and moans came to a stop as they succumbed to eternal darkness. Even as the last one of them died, he managed to gasp his dying words out in hopes of causing the blonde boy some emotional pain. "Why, you monster. You really are a demon." The dying man conveniently ignored the fact that he was about to brutally torture a small child, and died thinking of himself as one of the purest beings to grace the planet. Unfortunately for the now dead man, Naruto wasn't paying any attention to anyone around him, dead or dying. He had more important matters to attend to. That was too close a brush with death than what was expected. He had only been that close to dying once before and had absolutely no intention to face it again. The blonde still had the vivid memory of the park incident 3 years ago. If it wasn't for his Car-chan, he would have been dead, and who knows what would have happened to his sister. Naruto shook his head in an effort to vanquish the unnecessary thoughts from his mind. The 6-year-old let his eyes skim around and did a quick body count to see if he had missed any culprits whom he would have to deal with personally, but before the boy could finish that thought he was interrupted by Kyubi's soft voice in his head. Even though she was surprised by his technique previously, she had seen too much and been around too long to lose track of her objectives because of such surprises. She had already finished her preparations for the Sharingan implant and didn't want to take any chances by waiting any longer than necessary. "Just give me a moment, Naruto. I need to implant the Sharingan in your eyes to make it fully compatible with your Rinnegan while it's still forming." That was the last thing the blonde heard before his world went black. 7 hours later, Kasumi felt as if her legs were on fire as she dashed past the trees that seemed to envelope her surroundings at speeds her small body shouldn't be able to carry her at. As she ran through the forests, her eyes darted in all directions, worriedly searching for her brother. Today was their birthday, and like every single day the past year, he'd gone missing once again. It had become so usual that normally she would just worry herself at home and not go looking for him. But in her heart she knew that her brother was in danger, and that scared her to no end. She just knew what she was feeling was true, and if her Oni-chan was in danger, she had to get there as fast as she could. Car-chan is going to return from her mission soon. Please be okay, please. Breathing heavily, she sprinted once again in the direction where she could feel her brother was at. Whether it was because they were twins or because they contained parts of the same entity, she didn't know, didn't care. Even as her 6-year-old body screamed in pain of overuse, she continued to run in his direction. The only thing she could think of was to get to her brother as soon as possible. Tears trickled down her face as she stopped dead in a clearing. The scene she had stumbled across could only be described as a massacre, with hundreds of mangled corpses laying in giant crater. The corpses that were closer to the center seemed as if an akamiki had sat upon them, squished, their internal organs exposed in a disarray. The little girl was almost about to pass out from the display of blood and gore. But she held herself together in hopes of finding her brother and saving him. Her breathing grew ragged as her eyes fell upon her brother's body in the dead center of the crater, but she somehow managed to stay conscious, hoping against hope. Kasumi knew that the possibility of her brother surviving what none of the others had without taking any damage was next to impossible. Not with this level of disaster. So at the very least he must be injured, all the more reason for her to hurry. In a daze, she made her way through the corpses towards the only one that mattered to her. As she got close, she let out a relieved breath. His clothes were torn and a layer of blood coated his skin and tatters of clothes. It was clear to her that he was attacked and cut up quite badly. But he was breathing. Whoever made you suffer, Oni-chan, I will. Never forgive. Never forgive. She shook his shoulder in an effort to wake him up, but he didn't respond. After 10 minutes of constantly trying to wake him up, Kasumi was still on top of her brother, shaking him repeatedly. She wasn't strong enough to carry him all the way back to the compound, and was afraid that if she made a mistake his injuries might end up even worse. Finally her efforts yielded results, in the form of a small groan from Naruto. Oni-chan, wake up. His sister's voice somehow managed to reach him even with the huge headache he was experiencing. Naruto lay there on his back, with Kasumi sitting on top of him, shaking his upper body in an effort to wake him up. She was worried and furious at the same time, worried for her brother's well-being and furious at herself for not being there for him. It had been an entire year since he had just randomly started to disappear from around her, and returned with bruises and other small injuries. It wasn't anything life-threatening, but it was enough to concern her every time she saw him like that. She didn't know what was happening to him. Ka-chan never noticed as she wasn't around most of the time, and for some reason Naruto seemed to heal much faster than what should be possible. By the time Kushina arrived, Naruto was already back to perfect health. Kasumi often sobbed to herself when she was alone. She could only imagine what had caused all those bruises on Naruto's body. The redhead assumed the worst, thinking that her brother was being physically abused by the villagers. Naruto's current condition was more than enough proof for Kasumi to know she was right. He was constantly being abused by the villagers while she herself never once got touched. He was enduring it all alone while his selfish sister enjoyed a life of comfort. She was safe at the cost of her brother's safety. What kind of sister am I? I should have been there for him. She only blamed herself for not being strong enough to share his pain, or to make it go away. The redhead had tried to make sure not to leave his side, but no matter how hard she tried he would just slip away without her noticing. It was only thanks to Naruto's training with the Kyuubi that he was ever able to avoid his sister's watchful eyes, but she didn't know that. To her, it seemed as though she was careless and ignorant for leaving her brother alone like that, and by the time she found him again, he looked like he had been through a paper shredder multiple times. The fact that he refused to tell her what happened only solidified the girl's belief that he was being. Ugh! Naruto groaned as he felt some kind of liquid hit his cheeks. A flash of familiar crimson hair caught the blonde's attention even through his blurred vision. What the hell was his sister doing here? Wasn't she supposed to be in the compound doing? Wait, she didn't really do anything much without him, and this was their birthday. Shit, is she crying? What in the world happened, Q-chan? Naruto questioned mentally, still feeling somewhat disoriented. Sorry, Naruto. You passed out due to the pain of fusing the Rinnegan and Sharingan together, as well as having chakra exhaustion from your technique. It's been 7 hours. I think your sister got worried and decided to search for you. She must have been looking for you. How she found you though is beyond me. But that's beside the point. The thing is, my theory was a success. As the female demon gleefully informed her container of her success, her voice was filled with so much pride that she sounded like a mad scientist who had just discovered how to reanimate corpses. Naruto meanwhile caught onto something that she had let slip from her tongue without intending to. You mean you weren't sure if the fusion would even work? Kyubi chuckled nervously. She wasn't really what one could call a social being, so she wasn't used to holding conversations often, even after spending an entire year instructing Naruto. Since she had spent most of her life alone, she wasn't used to keeping a leash on her tongue, and that often tended to backfire whenever she was talking with her container. The demoness chuckled sheepishly as she admitted her fault. Well, you see, there was this little itty bitty, well, not so bitty, possibility of you losing the Rinnegan that I forgot to mention. You forgot. Forgot. He mentally yelled at her in disbelief. There was no way she had forgotten something like that. She obviously didn't tell him on purpose. Fortunately or unfortunately, he didn't recall what the Kyubi had told him about demons and how they're bound to their word and thus can't lie, in their earlier conversation. If he had, he would have been able to conclude that the demonic inability to lie was just a big lie in itself, or that the Kyubi was actually telling him the truth. Either way would have shown him that she wasn't the most reliable person around. Hey. Geez, calm down, it all went well, alright. Now you have what I told you are going to get. So let's just forget that there was a worse possibility. She tried to reassure her container. Fine, but while having the internal conversation with Kyubi, Naruto had completely forgotten about his crying twin, which in turn just caused her to worry more, racking her body with hysterical sobs. Her thoughts were running wild as she remained completely oblivious to the conversation being held between her brother and his prisoner. Maybe he's sick of me letting him get beat up like this all alone and doesn't want to talk to me anymore. Oh no, what if he hates me now? She didn't know what she would do if it ever came to that, how she would even survive without her brother being there for her. Other than her mother, he's been the only one she had enjoyed being with in all her life. More tears fell from her crystal blue eyes as she didn't know how injured he was right now. It was somewhat dark, but the moon was full, allowing her to see various sorts of weapons on the dead bodies of the villagers lying around her brother. She didn't know what was going on, and hovering over her brother's body while in plain view of hundreds of dead bodies didn't really raise her spirits either. She once again tried to coax him back with her soft voice. Oni-chan. I don't care if he hates me now, first I have make sure he's safe and then bring him back home. After that I'll do anything I can to win him back. And even if that isn't enough, at least he will be there. Finally Naruto looked up at her as he broke away from his internal conversation with his tenant. He noticed that her lower lip was trembling as tears flowed freely from her ocean blue eyes. The blonde didn't really know how he should respond to the situation now. In his haste to acquire a great tool to protect his family from the villagers and other enemies, he had forgotten that Kasumi wouldn't just sit around in the compound if she couldn't find him. It was a wonder she wasn't targeted by some of the more drunken villagers, ones who may not be scared of what she holds. He shuddered to think what they would have done with her if she had gotten into trouble. When it was obvious that he was not going to say anything to her, Kasumi finally voiced her thoughts. What happened here, Oni-chan? Are you okay? Her voice trembled with concern and worry for her brother's well-being, and fear that he didn't love her anymore. Naruto sighed as he finally realized what he had to do. If there was one thing Naruto could never bear to see, it was the crying form of his sister. Let's get away from here first, okay? I'll explain everything, I promise, Kasumi-chan. Please stop crying, it doesn't suit you. You're a strong girl, right? He pushed her cute nose with his index finger playfully, and tenderly wiped her tears with his thumb. The blonde didn't feel comfortable around all the carnage after his own near-death experience, and the explanation could take a while. Besides, he didn't know how Kasumi was dealing with all this in her mind. He'd never planned for her to see any of this at all, not this early anyway. She was much more emotional than him, and death probably had a greater impact on her as well. Kasumi nodded vigorously as she felt her brother wipe her tears away. If her brother needed her to be strong, she would do her best. Naruto's eyes hardened imperceptibly as his mind caught up completely with his situation. He did all these men and women. Some of them resembled pancakes, and soup and many other things. The equipment the villagers had been carrying for torture had been rather creative. Unfortunately for them, they got impaled and were subjected to torture by their own tools when everything had been flung back by Naruto's technique. Luckily for many of them though, their deaths were somewhat quick. Naruto wasn't surprised when he didn't feel any guilt. He thought the first was supposed to be tough to deal with, but always suspected his lack of giving a shit for people he didn't care about. Could this be explained logically? Maybe it was because he had about 100 firsts, so the guilt got divided into 100 parts so he didn't feel it. Nah, that sounded too ridiculous. Maybe it was a logical choice. Or Bede, he always favored logic. Yeah, that sounds much better. Or maybe they were just the kind of people who would harm an innocent child and he probably did the world a favor. Either way, it didn't matter to Naruto. He'd do this 10 times over if it gave him even the tiniest chance to provide safety and happiness to his mother and sister. Besides, weren't these the same people who were going to torture him? So what if they died? And he highly doubted they would have hesitated doing the same to his sister if she had the Kyuubi's soul sealed inside of her instead of him. His fists tightened at the thought. Good riddance. He wrapped his arms around his sister's waist and picked her up, standing up himself at the same time. Thanks to his training with Kyuubi, he was now much more physically fit than what should have been possible for a 6-year-old. He had no difficulty in lifting Kasumi and carrying her with him. Kasumi snuggled to her brother's chest, seeking comfort from his embrace as she was carried a few meters away from the clearing. The thick foliage blocked the view and they both felt much better without all the corpses and the foul stench around them. Naruto had a slight inkling as to what his sister was thinking about. It wasn't that hard to guess since he was being held so tightly against her, and she was also trying to bury her head into his chest almost as if she was afraid that he would disappear at any moment. He felt slightly guilty for causing her to worry so much, but if he had told her, it would have only served to worry her more. He didn't need any sort of help with something like this. Activating his bloodline was his responsibility, and his alone. Naruto sat down on a nearby rock, letting Kasumi settle down on his lap while she tried her best not to start crying again with all of her doubts and worries still meddling in her mind. Oni-chan, I'll do anything, I promise. Please don't leave me, she pleaded with as much determination in her voice as she could muster, but it still wavered a little due to her nervousness. She knew that her brother only had herself and Ka-chan to help him, so she had to try her best to comfort her Oni-chan in whatever way he needs. Her brother alone had to endure the hate of the entire village. All alone for so long, she couldn't let that continue and live with herself. Sure, she was shunned, as was her mother, but it was just social isolation and not downright hate and abuse like she thought he experienced. She wanted to wail, cry and sob till her eyes bled for her brother's pain. It just isn't fair. Why did he have to endure all this pain by himself? Why can't I help him? Naruto tried to assure her with a cheerful smile and a kiss on her cheek. I know, Kasumi. You don't have to worry about things like that. I love you too much for something like that to happen. He tucked one of his sister's crimson locks behind her ear as he continued what would be a long tale. It all started about a year ago. Later. And that's it. He took a deep breath and waited for her response. It was never a matter of trust. He trusted both his twin sister and mother more than anyone, including himself. It was just that he didn't want him to worry about him unnecessarily. Kasumi had stopped sobbing somewhere in the middle of his explanation. She was taking more happiness in the fact that her brother wasn't being constantly beaten or abused than she ever had. It was like most of her worries had been taken away in an instant, giving her more confidence and joy than she had ever hoped for. "Oh, Oni-chan. I'm so happy you were okay all this time." Kasumi cheered as she hugged her brother tightly, giggling in unrestrained joy all the while. He'd been okay. Of course, she was still worried because he had been training relentlessly for a year without any kind of help from her mother or even letting her know, but that was way better than him being beaten or abused. Naruto let a small smile grace his face as he rubbed his sister's back comfortingly. He knew something like this was going to happen when he finally revealed the truth. He just hadn't wanted her to find out by herself. A lot of her worries would never have been born if he had gotten the chance to explain himself before her finding out, but what was done was done. At least nothing too bad happened. Noticing her looking rather uneasily at the dead bodies just beyond the foliage, Naruto couldn't help but cringe a little. While training with the Kyuubi, he had been introduced to the wonderful concept of mindscape training. It put a significant stress on his mind to train within the mindscape and slow the time down by making his consciousness faster, but it was well worth it. He easily gained a few extra hours of training every day, and his mind matured far faster than any normal kid's mind would. Not that he was normal in any sense of the word to begin with. Basically, he was no longer of the same mental age as his sister, even though the difference wasn't that great right now. Still, he thought he could at least explain to Kasumi what had happened here. "Hey, the reason I didn't tell either of you about any of this before was because I needed to be in a life-threatening situation to be able to activate my Rinnegan. I know you'd never have allowed that to happen willingly." He smiled at the glare he got from the redhead. Her look didn't intimidate him in the slightest, but it was clear she wanted to scream at him for saying that. "You're saying that as if it's a bad thing, Oni-chan. I don't mean it like that, you know what I mean anyway, and I hope you understand." Her gaze softened as she nodded. "So, I went out for a little walk in the park. Those dead bodies you saw earlier were of the civilians who thought that I was defenseless and tried to me, and since you weren't there they were not scared either. And no, it's not your fault. You weren't there because I didn't want you to be there, so don't blame yourself," he stated firmly as he saw her eyes glistening. She was normally brave and daring, but her brother hadn't been himself for an entire year with her, so her persona had become much more fragile than it should have been. Now that she knew what had really happened, she should go back to being her old self, but it might still take a while. "They chased me out here so that, first of all, no one would come to my rescue and, secondly, maybe if I had somehow managed to stay alive, I would have died due to the lack of medical attention." Kasumi shrank back at that. The very thought of her brother dying scared her. "Just when I was about to get skewered by kitchen utensils and whatnot, my Rinnegan activated and somehow I knew how to use this move called the Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push, which basically throws everything around me away with great force. Since I'd never used it before, I poured almost all my chakra into it, which caused me to pass out from fatigue. That's good though. It saved me from the majority of the pain from the Sharingan implant." He had to give Kasumi credit, she had taken it quite well, much better than he expected. She nodded thoughtfully. Are you going to tell Ka-chan about this? Should we hide it? Naruto frowned. That probably won't be a pleasant conversation. I don't know, should I? I mean, I trust her and all, but I am not sure how she will take to me talking with the Kyuubi, let alone her being my sensei. Kasumi looked uncomfortable for a while before she gathered enough courage to voice her thoughts to her brother. Oni-chan, I think we should tell her. She loves us so much. Besides, how do you think she will react once you go missing to complete your training? Do you really think you can keep this from her, Oni-chan? She'll be really hurt. Kasumi inwardly cringed when she thought about her Ka-chan finding out they had not told her anything about something this big. This was a major event in their lives, and if Naruto kept this from their mother, then their family will lose the close relationship they share now. She had already thought Naruto was slowly pushing him away, but now that she knew that wasn't the case, she wouldn't let the slightest possible chance of it actually happening exist. After some thought, Naruto finally agreed to her request. I guess you're right. She's not going to be too mad, huh? And since when did you get so smart? The redhead grinned at her brother, happy that he had accepted her request. She blushed and refused to tell him her smartness came from the additional exercise her brain got this past year due to constantly worrying about him. Don't worry, Oni-chan, we're in this together now. I'll help you convince her. I hope, she added to herself. If worse came to worse, she'd still be there for him and would try to do her best. Naruto grinned and gave her a passionate hug, much to her joy. Thanks, Kasumi-chan, you're awesome. The redhead sighed in contentment and relief as her brother held her tightly. It had been so long since she had seen him happy that she was completely starved for that bright smile and his loving touch. Seeing his smile and hugging him again made her feel like butterflies were fluttering in her belly. Uzumaki Compound, Konoha. Kushina honestly didn't know whether she was blessed or cursed when she had come to visit her grand aunt Mito-sama in Konoha. It was then that Uzushio had been attacked by the combined forces of Kumo, Kiri and Iwa. It was to this day unknown how the invaders got past the legendary barriers of Uzushio, or why no help came from their allies Konoha and Suna. But the one undeniable fact that none could dispute was that the clan of longevity, the masters of the mysterious art of sealing, were no more. Except her. Having nothing else to do, she had joined the Konoha Academy on her grand aunt's advice. Barely 2 years later, she was kidnapped by 4 Kumo Jonin, and later rescued by Namikaze Minato. Like a knight in shining armor, he had entered her life like a prince coming to rescue a princess. And for the first time since her aunt mysteriously disappeared, she had felt loved again. After that, she had lived a life of dreams with a man she truly admired, and then became the proud mother of 2 lovely babies. But as soon as that happened, her life turned upside down as she had to choose between her husband and children. She collapsed on her soft couch with a groan. She still had her Anbu uniform on, her mask attached to the waistband as she hugged the fluffy pillow. Her long flowing crimson hair reached down past her waist, and her face shone with an almost divine inner glow that came from having a truly enormous chakra core. Despite how tired she was, her expression remained serene. She wore no makeup. But even without it, her lips were red, her cheeks rosy, and her skin glowed. It was evident why she had so many suitors despite being a mother of 2 really despised children. In the end, a mother's basic duty to her children far outweighed the admiration she felt for Minato. But it didn't matter to him as he went against her wishes and put her children in danger anyway. That was his final betrayal, one that erased all forms of positive feelings she once held for the man. Now the name alone was enough to leave a bitter taste in her mouth. Namikaze Minato, Yondaime Hokage of Konoha, and the one because of whom she and her children now lived a life of isolation and fear. Yes, fear. The normally fearless Kunoichi Uzumaki Kushina was afraid. Not for herself, but for her children. Every time she wasn't there with them, there was a constant nagging worry in her mind whether or not they will be safe when she got back. The only thing that protected them in this village was a fuinjutsu keke she had put around their compound, but aside from that, they were defenseless. She knew the workings behind the Shiki Fujin. It was an Uzumaki fuinjutsu technique after all. She knew Minato could have avoided sealing the Kyuubi into anyone altogether. The demon would have been locked away within the Shinigami if Minato wanted. But no, he wanted his beloved village to have a weapon and a scapegoat. Konoha needs something truly powerful after me. After all this, he had said. And she wasn't strong enough to stop him. Her fists clenched in anger and self-loathing, but then a single thought calmed her down. A sad smile graced her face as she thought about her two little twins. She may not have been able to protect them at that time, but she could love them as much as they needed right now until the day she died. And she vowed that she would. The only reason she convinced herself to stay alive and fit was for her two little bundles of joy. They were truly a blessing in her otherwise extremely depressing life. She'd been there for them all their lives as much as she could, but her funds had run out after the first 3 years and she had to go back to doing S-rank missions to ensure that they had enough money to live. Everything in the village was expensive and dangerous for the Uzumaki, so she had to buy from outside the village while on missions. Sure, she could use a simple henge to buy from within Konoha, but why pay the people who hate you? And it still didn't remove the remote possibility of some obsolete poison making its way into her children's belly. However, despite all the hate she possessed for the village, she knew that she couldn't leave just like that. Not right now, at least, not until her kids could defend themselves. After that, she had no intention of staying in Konoha any longer. She was confident in her skills, and knew that she could probably beat the Sandaime Hokage in a one-on-one battle. But that wasn't the problem at all. The problem was one of her kids, or maybe both of them, getting injured, even fatally during one of the Hunter Nin parties if she decides to take the path of missing Nin. She would never forgive herself if that happened. No, she couldn't leave the village right now and endanger her children. That would have to wait till they grew strong enough to defend themselves. Then maybe they could finally be free. She pushed those thoughts aside from her mind. Konoha always brought up rather unpleasant memories. Even after constant attempts of abuse, most of which failed thanks to her presence. It was unbelievable how the villagers thought they could get rid of the demon's soul sealed in Naruto, by proxying her son, and still have her loyalty. She clenched her fist tightly. Those Kushina knew that the only reason they even considered abstaining from harming Kasumi was because of their hunger for power, which the little girl had in spades despite it being of demonic nature. The barriers around the house alerted her to the entrance of 2 Kiden people, breaking the redhead out of her thoughts. She straightened out her clothes and sat up on the couch, a giddy smile on her face as she waited for her twins to come greet her. She smiled widely as the door opened and the two of them quickly made their way towards her for a quick hug. Ah, you didn't miss me too much, did you? Mama is so sorry, babies. And today's your birthday too. They were such good kids. Little Naruto was so cutely handsome, he'd be a lady for sure. She giggled. And Kasumi was going to be a beauty, just like her. Okay, maybe better. She was just a bit chubby looking at Kasumi's age, while Kasumi looked quite attractive already. She would have been jealous if the girl wasn't her own daughter. So she settled on being proud. Yes, we did, Ka-chan. But, can we talk to you for a minute? Kushina smiled warmly at them. She knew that her family was never going to have a normal life. Both her children were jailers to a demon lord and a force of nature. People will want them under their control or dead. That's why she had decided to start training them in ninja arts in her free time after their birthday today. While not much, it would definitely make them genin level by the end of the year when they enter the academy. Oh, that's right, it's party time. Gotta get ready to make the kids happy. Naruto fidgeted, appearing extremely nervous. Ka-chan, about my training. Kasumi looked to be equally, if not more nervous. This of course made Kushina wonder why they were nervous since they were never nervous around her. And why was Naruto looking down? She couldn't even see his eyes like that. Her son had always looked into her eyes while they talked before, so she knew something wasn't right. Come to think of it, she didn't know where they had been before now. They weren't at home when she came back, but she was so tired that she just collapsed on the couch for a while. Doing 2S rank missions in 4 days might do that sometimes. She had been on soldier pills and had not slept a single moment during this time. What is it? She kept her voice even though she was worried of what she might hear. It was her fault. Surely something happened last night. She shouldn't have slept, should have checked the kids first. She felt like crying. But she had to give her kids strength right now. Why, you're not hurt, are you? Don't worry, Mom, we're both fine. And no, nothing happened because of you. The two of them patted her shoulders. Oh, the cage-level Kunoichi seemed somewhat sheepish. Great, even 6-year-olds could read her like an open book, and she's supposed to be one of the best. Well, Kasumi can anyway. Naruto-kun would usually be oblivious to my emotions even if they were written on my forehead. Then again, I'm no good at reading people's emotions either, so I can't really comment on that. Naruto decided that if they had to get this done today, he should tell her before he follows his instincts and switches to other subjects to avoid his mother's fury if she gets mad. Her nickname, the Bloody Red Hot Chili, suited her perfectly when pissed. Kasumi meanwhile was thinking of a different way to approach the subject. While Naruto was very smart, he had no people skills. He could never tell what someone in front of him was feeling. That Hinata girl had been following him for 2 years and he has yet to notice why. She doesn't know why, but for some reason, she was relieved for that attribute. It gave her something she could help him with. Although she didn't like the idea of Naruto and Hinata together as that would take the little time she had with Naruto away. Finally, she decided on approaching this situation in a less catastrophic manner. It wouldn't do to say, "Hey Mom, Oni-chan has been talking to the QB and he's going to leave us to train." Ka-chan's reaction might be funny though. She giggled internally before sobering up. Ka-san, how much do you know about our Uzumaki bloodline? She asked. Kushina gave her a weird look at the formal title, knowing something's up, but she decided to answer her daughter anyway. Well, let's see, how much have I told you? Our bloodline is called the Kanzen Tentai, or the perfect physique. To the best of my knowledge, no one has ever been able to utilize it to its full potential. While Azuchiogaku was still standing, I'd seen Uzumaki who were able to slow down their aging process, living almost twice of what is considered a normal life. Some had blood so pure that consuming it would completely heal even the more lethal wounds from battles. Some were able to regenerate entire body parts provided that they had enough chakra in their system and the body part was non-vital. I'm able to regenerate body parts, by the way, but you already knew that, NE. She smiled sheepishly as she saw them both shudder. Both of them had totally freaked out when their mother came home with just one arm. Like she did on any other day, she went to bed and told them not to worry. They were both worried, of course. Even though they were only 4 at that time, they knew that entire limbs can't be grown back by even the most advanced medical techniques. That had been proven wrong when the next morning they found her making breakfast with both of her arms like normal. There wasn't even a scar anywhere. Kushina continued once she saw the twins understood. The mastery of these traits varies from one female to another. Sadly enough, no known male Uzumaki has ever been able to utilize the Kanzen Tentai bloodline. But all Uzumaki females have one of these traits. Mastery varies from person to person. Some can live for 120 years, while others go as far as 200. Some can regenerate only fingers, while I myself can regenerate entire limbs. And there have been legends which speak of an Uzumaki maiden whose blood could bring back anyone from the brink of death. She chuckled wryly. Hey, that rumor had cost us dearly, and many greedy people have been out for Uzumaki blood since then. Both children nodded their heads at the information. They were somewhat impressed by the potential of the bloodline and saddened by their clan's loss, but none of that really mattered right now. Naruto knew he needed to be the one to tell his mother the truth. He would never hide behind Kasumi and be a coward. Ka-chan, I need you to let me tell you everything, and once I am done you can let me know what you think, okay? It was not normal for either of her kids to talk her so seriously unless the situation called for it, so Kushina responded with a nod of her head. Her curiosity towards their attitude was kept at bay for the time being. Ka-chan, I've been talking to the Kyuubi for a while now. Kasumi winced as her mother abruptly stood up. Please mum, before you freak out please let him explain. Kushina calmed herself down with a few deep breaths before nodding. Naruto continued, his voice gentle as if to soften the blow of the words. She's not that bad really. While she doesn't think of humans as more than cockroaches, she doesn't hate them either. And since her life depends on me, she wants to help me stay alive. She may be a demon, but there's nothing wrong with her helping me as long as we're all safe, right? She does have millennium worth of knowledge, and this is what she told me about the Uzumaki bloodline. He paused for the dramatic effect. Neither of the girls knew too much history about their bloodline, and getting it from a millennium-old source was rather tempting. While Kushina was a bit worried about the Kyuubi's interference with her son's life, she had heard that the demons could talk to their containers and sometimes help them to prolong their own survival. Of course, before this there hadn't been many soul-binding seals used on containers, and a demon would simply be released once the container dies. Finally Naruto decided that they'd been kept in enough suspense. As opposed to what you've told us, the male Uzumaki do have a bloodline. But it's so rare that it only activates once every hundreds of years. It's called the Rinnegan. Because of its rarity it is mostly dismissed as a myth. According to Kyuubi, the Uzumaki have gained most of the 6-path sage's powers, and since he was also the container of the Jubi, the inheritance is considerably enormous. The Kanzen Tentai bloodline can grant eternal youth to those who are able to master it. You were accurate on the 3 classifications you described, but what you said about different people having only one of these was not entirely true. If a female Uzumaki is able to master the bloodline, she can regenerate any body part except the brain, and has complete control of her age. That doesn't mean she's immortal, of course, even the deities can beat. And it doesn't matter if they've mastered Kanzen Tentai or not, if the opponent is tough enough then they're as good as dead. Long ago, Kyuubi fought one of our ancestors, one with complete control of her bloodline. She was tough to take down, but in the end, the fight with the Kyuubi had left her so exhausted that the girl didn't have enough chakra to regenerate, and as a result she was. Kushina was a bit overwhelmed by all of this information, but she successfully maintained her composure thanks to her years of being a kunoichi. That was very informative, Sochi-kun, but what was it that you wanted to discuss about your training? I don't see how this relates. History is interesting to know sometimes, but it's not something a shinobi really needs to know. The blonde nodded, and over the next 10 minutes explained to her some of what he had explained to Kasumi. His mother was silent for a while as she contemplated on Naruto's words, breaking the silence only when she was sure she understood everything. So what can the Rinnegan do? Kushina asked. Well, even Kyuubi doesn't know everything about it, but since she doesn't have much else to do in me, she's analyzing my bloodline and will tell me when she finds out anything interesting. In an instant Kushina was in front of him, holding his shoulders, their faces so close that he was surprised not to feel any contact. She's messing with your body. It's fine, Mom, please trust me. Let me finish. She snarled. It's not fine. Hear me out, you whore. If my son loses one hair on his head, I'll change the seal to make the rest of your pathetic little life so miserable that you will regret ever talking to him. Ka-chan. Listen to me. Quote, quote. Taking her silence as a go, Naruto continued, knowing his mother was disturbed by what he said and needed to be distracted. What I know for now is that the Rinnegan enables the user to control all 6 elements, including gravity. The Rikado Sennin also created the moon to seal away the Jubi's body, so we're assuming that the gravity control can be taken to that level if I have enough power and mastery. Of course, the sage was hundreds of times more powerful than I might ever be. After all, he did defeat the 10-tailed demon, which was made of all 9 bijus together, and defeated her single-handed with his own power. And he was strong enough that even on his deathbed he divided it into 9 parts. He can basically be called the Kyuubi's dad. Naruto concluded with a chuckle. Can you show me your eyes? Kushina asked somewhat hesitantly. You can still see fine. I can always give you mine if it's blurry, they will grow back. Naruto finally looked up at her straight in the eyes. Unlike the other dojutsu, the Rinnegan couldn't be deactivated at will. Once someone acquires it, their eyes are permanently changed to the blue-gray ripple pattern of the Rinnegan. His version was a bit different though. It had a slightly bigger, central black pupil. He channeled some chakra into his eye, his cornea became red and a single tomo surrounded his pupil. There's no need, Ka-chan, I see more clearly than I ever have. Kushina lost herself looking into his eyes. The beautiful blue eyes her son once had now seemed to tell her with one gaze that either she shall follow him or be destroyed. They practically exude power, so much power. Meanwhile, Naruto was already feeling exhaustion coming to him. While his reserves were twice as large as those of a genin despite being only 6 years old, they were still too weak to power his eyes for long durations. He was still suffering from chakra exhaustion due to his experience just a few hours back and had yet to recover. He deactivated his Sharingan. The permanent but small drain of chakra that his Rinnegan consumed was slowly but surely becoming less bothersome. His reserves were increasing, and he was getting used to it. Kushina sighed in resignation. This was definitely not something that she'd been expecting. She pulled Naruto close and rested her head on his shoulder. Closing her eyes, she contemplated her situation. Her son seemed to truly care about the demoness for some reason. Enough to defend her from his own mother. She had never felt more jealous in her entire life. He was her child. There were only 3 options she could think of at the moment. First was to deny her son his request of training outside the village, which helped since she didn't want him to leave his sister and herself anyway. While she had grown fond of the village before Minato died, right now she wouldn't give a flying if it burns in hell. All they do is scowl or sneer at her kids, and the more daring ones even glare at her for housing hell spawns. Next option was to allow him to go out alone, which was unsafe. True, he had a demon to guide him and had the Yogengan as he called it for additional help, but he still just wasn't skilled enough to survive out there alone yet. Not to mention she didn't trust Kyuubi one bit. Not with her son's life. Third option was to train Naruto till he could at least defend himself properly, and then allow him to go on wherever he wanted. It was a tough decision, but the only one that allowed her to not lose her Naru-chan's trust. Naruto-kun, I understand what you are saying. But I don't think you're ready to be out there all alone just yet, Kyuubi's guidance or not. I want to at least train you a little before you go. During this time no one must come to know about your or my bloodline. I've already told you how important it is to keep secrets in the ninja world. That's why not even he knew much about it despite living with me for all those years. If anyone comes to know much about Kanzen Tentai, Kasumi's and my blood will be on the market and you will be used for breeding the next generation of the Uzumaki bloodline. If her tone didn't make it completely obvious that she being serious, the look in her eyes did. We understand, Ka-chan. Both Kasumi and Naruto responded simultaneously. Naruto felt somewhat happy with his mother's decision. The events at the forest clearing a few hours ago had made him face the truth. If even a single person from that mob had survived, Naruto would have been while he was passed out. He needed to be stronger than he was right now to be able to survive out there all alone. Kushina smiled brightly at that. This wasn't so bad, right? I get to keep my kids with me for now. I'll think about the future later. Alright then, enjoy the last day of your somewhat free life. From tomorrow your survival training will begin. And you're going to be in a world of pain. You'll almost wish you had been adopted by some Konoha civilian. Kukuku. Her smirk and chuckles sent shivers down the 2 kids' spines, and Kyuubi nervously wondered if this would be the last year of her existence. Next morning. To neither of the twins' surprise, their training had begun with basic chakra exercises. It was the basic building block of everything ninja, so they had to learn how to harness and control it before doing anything advanced. But the twins were receiving different types of exercises because of the great difference they had in their needs. While Naruto had been training for a year in secret and had high Chunin level chakra control, he only had low Chunin level reserves. This would have been excellent if it was someone else, but the Uzumaki naturally have about 4 times the normal chakra reserves. His Yogengan while fully activated also drained him very rapidly. Kasumi's case was just the opposite. She already had mid-Jonin level reserves but her chakra control was non-existent. Right now, Naruto was trying to maximize his chakra reserves while Kasumi was working on chakra control. Their Ka-chan had told them they will be learning the shadow clone technique after 1 week of chakra exercises. By that time Naruto should have enough chakra to perform the technique efficiently while Kasumi should have enough control over hers to at least use it to some extent. Once they've learned it, their control and reserves will probably increase at inhuman rates. Naruto, according to Kushina, won't be able to make as many clones as Kasumi at once, even after all the chakra exercises, simply because the yoki stored within the girl had stretched her coils out since she was an infant. The redhead had such high reserves that her non-existent control should allow her to keep up. Ow ow ow, that hurts. Right now our blonde hero was busy boiling himself while trying to walk on hot water. Kyubi was inwardly panicking due to the temperature. She'd reached the conclusion that Kushina was a sadist. Ever since she had implanted the Sharingan into Naruto, the seal had somewhat relaxed, which allowed her to feel what Naruto feels, and see what he sees to a greater level. Needless to say, she had never been boiled alive before. Oh, for the love of all that is evil and demonic, please don't fall again. She let loose another painful wail in the blonde's mind as he fell into the boiling hot water, but it was to no avail. She once again cursed herself for her arrogance. How could she have thought she was invincible and then let herself be sealed in a child abuser's baby? She never should have come here. Are you okay, Oni-chan? Ouch. No, not the butt smacker again. That long black stick had delivered so much pain to her cute butt that she was shocked it hadn't swollen to enormous proportions. Then pay attention to not drowning instead of looking at your brother boiling himself. That's what you'll be doing next anyway. A week passed by and Kushina finally taught them both how to use the shadow clone technique, also known as the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The results had been anything but normal. Right now, our hero was gaping at the sight of his sister's shadow clones. Wow. Good job, Kasumi, he exclaimed in shock and awe. To think, his sister actually managed to make almost 5 times the amount of clones that he was capable of. He shuddered to think how far behind he would have been had he not started a year earlier than her. But still, with reserves that big, she'll never be able to reach the level of control I have. Not to mention both our reserves will only increase with time. Kasumi blushed and twirled her foot on the ground. This was mimicked by all 100 of her clones, which made for quite a weird sight. Thank you, Oni-chan. They chorused. The redhead felt somewhat guilty for getting all the yoki while her brother only got a whiny bitch in his head. Who would want that? Before she could apologize, ouch. My cute butt. Did I tell you to stand around blushing and puffing out your rosy cheeks after making the clones? That's not fair, Ka-chan. Why only her all the time? Or, Oni-chan looks so cute. Ouch. Okay, that was unexpected. It's even now, both of you, back to work. Kushina smiled warmly at the duo, she was so proud of them. Contrary to what Kasumi thought, Kushina didn't use the stick on her to punish her. Its true purpose was to get her used to pain so she would be able to concentrate on her chakra flow to aid in her regeneration abilities. Every time, she hit just a little harder, and slowly Kasumi was building up a pain tolerance without even knowing. Naruto didn't need this training as he didn't have the regeneration bloodline. They had exceeded all her expectations and beyond. That's enough for today, kids. From here on out, you can leave your clones to do all the chakra control exercises. Your reserves will increase from the strain of using a chakra-intensive kinjutsu that the Kage Bunshin is, and most of them will work on your chakra control, giving it a massive boost due to their numbers. That takes out the chakra, or rather, spiritual aspects of your training. Now we'll have to work on the physical aspects as well. That means from tomorrow, your physical conditioning begins. She gave them a grin that a predator would give its prey before devouring them whole. Both of them gulped nervously while Kasumi tried to hide behind Naruto. They knew this was going to be hell. They've only been working on chakra control till now, and it was anything but pleasant. The twins had no idea what their mother was planning for physical conditioning. Maybe she would have been gentler if she didn't have a deadline to meet. There was a good chance that if she let them slack the slightest bit, Naruto will have to pay for it with his life while he was out there alone. They could have sworn they just saw two devil's horns on her head just now. Kukuku. The other three shivered in despair. I don't like it when she does that creepy laugh. Before anyone knew, a month had passed by and both Naruto and Kasumi grew dramatically in both mental and physical aspects. They were now capable of running more than 10 laps around Konoha and not be winded, while the cage bunshin training was causing them to mature faster than what would be considered normal. Of course they didn't actually run around Konoha, but instead did hundreds of laps in the rather large private training grounds. Naruto always had 30 cage bunshin working on chakra exercises 16 hours each day, and while sleeping he trained with Kyuubi in his mindscape. If not for the mindscape training, Kasumi would be miles ahead of him right now. As it was, she was lagging just a little behind him. Hey Naruto. Yeah. You know, you weren't so bad, for a pathetic human brat. Naruto was shocked that Kyuubi, of all people, would say such a thing to him. If she was anything, she was stuck up and prideful. What do you mean? He could have sworn he just heard a choked sob. I mean, you know, tomorrow your sadistic bitch. I mean mother will start her jutsu training, and I don't think we'll survive it. I wanted to at least be on good terms with the person I'll be spending an eternity within the Shinigami's stomach. Naruto sweat dropped. Ka-chan's training was hard, but he was sure she wasn't going to him or Kasumi. That couldn't possibly happen, he hoped. I think you're just overreacting, Q-chan.